Joined now by journalist Stefan de Vries, one of the first people to arrive on the scene at after the Charlie Hebdo attacks. He joins me now from Paris. Thanks very much for joining us today. Just give us a sense of how you're feeling and what you remember about that day.
Well, it was a very strange day. Like you said, I was one of the first to arrive on the scene on January 7th because my office is only 5 minutes away from the Charlie Hebdo, where they were having their offices at the time. When I arrived, actually, maybe at the same moment as the emergency services, and the situation was very unclear. I tried to gather information from the police, who was running around very frantically. They had no idea either. First, there were reports of 2 people injured by a shooting. Then it became 3 people injured, 1 dead. 2 dead, and then it took about a half hour when we learned that 12 people had died within Charlie Hebdo's premises, and amongst them a lot of members of the magazine. So then suddenly we realized that more journalists had gathered at that moment already. Suddenly we realized that 12 of our colleagues had been killed in cold blood on a clear day in January 2015.
And that day, of course, was 1 year ago on Thursday. And on Thursday, we saw a man that was killed by police as he approached a police station in northern Paris with a meat cleaver, wearing what turned out to be a fake explosives vest, and claimed to be doing it in the name of ISIS. Just talk to us about the concerns in Paris, about fears about another terrorist assault. What's the feeling like there?
Well, yeah, of course, the Parisians are very tense. In January, Charlie Hebdo attacks, they thought, well, this was a very targeted attack. But then the attacks in November showed that basically everybody in Paris could be a target. People just enjoying lives, having a drink on a terrace, something all the Parisians do every day. It's changed very much the attitude of the Parisians in daily life. When you go into stores, in supermarkets, everywhere, your bags are being checked. There's a lot of police in the streets, also very heavily armed military troops. So this has changed completely. And of course, the Parisians stay resilient. They say, well, we're not afraid. But if you look at the restaurants and the bars and the hotels and even museums, they all have the big problem that people are just not coming anymore. So it has a huge economical impact, of course, but also a mental impact, because Parisians are very afraid. And as we have seen this week again with the attack on the police station in the north of Paris, the danger is not gone. Attacks can happen every day, everywhere, on every single moment.
In, of course, a reaction to the massacre we saw in November, the French president took up the fight against ISIS in Syria and Iraq. Just explain for us what's being done to fight those sort of lone wolf attackers within France.
Well, the actions in Syria against ISIS by the French army are not very controversial. Over 90% of the French population supports the French action in Syria. But that was the case right after the attacks. Now, almost 2 months later, people start asking questions. What are the effects? What are the costs? Is it really useful? And there's also a change in politics. As you know, we are still under the state of emergency here in France, which will last theoretically until the end of February. But the government has introduced a bill earlier this week that will actually implement all the extreme measures the police has now into normal legislation. And this is a very sensitive point to academics, but also to judges, who are saying now that democracy in France is under danger. That's something we've also seen after 9/11 in the USA. But it's a debate that's just beginning, and actually the biggest question of our time is, how far do we have to go with security in order to guarantee our liberties? And that's something the French president has not answered yet, and it will without a doubt be the topic of this year.
Certainly a very tough question as well. Stefan de Vries, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.